Man, welcome back. It's your guy, the one and only Coach Tony, Season 1, Episode 2 of the Pull Up Podcast Show. Thank you very much. Make sure that you come in and hold on here. Let me get myself together. Make sure you come in and like and subscribe, share the show. More importantly, subscribe to the show. Tonight is going to be impactful. We've got a gentleman on tonight with me that's going to answer a lot of those questions when it comes to the sports industry. But for right now, Val, you know what to do. Drop.
It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. Bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So, I said bounce the voice and Coach Tony, you know. It's the Pull Up Podcast. So.
Man, welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast Show with the one and only Coach Tony. Tonight, man, we got a guest that's hailed from none other than Greenville, South Carolina. This guy, my guy, served as the director of basketball for Nike. He was a consultant with Adidas. This guy's got some major pull, working with some big brands. He also was a professional basketball player, hailed, by the way, of Clemson University, point guard. Me and him need to get on the court and play a little one-on-one. I think we both still got it, but this brother played a little European ball as well. We're going to talk about that. But more importantly, we're going to dive into this book of his right here, The Black Market. This book, if you haven't got it, Val, make sure you put this in the line. The Black Market. Oh, my God. Merle Cole, the author. We're going to talk about the high stakes and the journey into the world of college basketball, the good, the bad, the ugly. None other. Let's bring my guy on here, Brother Merle Cole. Brother Merle, what's up, baby?
How you doing, Coach?
Man, it's like playing a game of basketball around here, man. We got 4 quarters of heat now on this new show, man. It's great. For one, when you and I last talked, we was on the other side, on the interludes, man. So I'm glad to have you back coming in this time, talking a little bit more, in depth about the black market and just the business of basketball and sports in general. But let's get into this NFL weekend real quick, especially your back door, man. Your boy Jackson didn't show up, man.
Listen, playoff time is a different animal, and Lamar is one of the best dudes to ever do it. He's got a different style of play. Sometimes it's your night, and sometimes it's not. Congratulate that man on hopefully winning the MVP this year and carrying his team as far as he did. They had a lot of injuries that they dealt with. Not making excuses for them, but they had a hell of a season, and they came up short. It can only be one champion every year, man. And so he keeps progressing. He won a playoff game. Next year, let's see, if he can kind of continue that trend and keep getting more wins and getting closer to getting that ring.
Oh, yeah, I was arguing with a guy today. But, man, matter of fact, you got a nice crowd checking in, man. Send some shout-outs to your boy, Kerry Willis. Said, Brother Cole, what's up? So, we got a couple of guys coming into the show tonight. But it's funny that you mentioned what you said. I tell guys that even on my basketball, Merle, I don't have to be better than you next week. I just need to be better than you today.
Sure.
That's it. And, everyone talks about the MVP with Lamar and the things he did, obviously having his mom as his agent and all that and backing him up. Then he came and had a good season. I was kind of going back and forth with my guys earlier this morning. One of my guys was talking about since Patrick Mahomes beat him, did he really deserve the MVP? And like I explained to him, we're talking about like the Heisman Trophy. They give that award out before the season is done. And it's a body of work throughout the entire year. They're not judging on if you win that playoff game or not, because that's futuristic odds. We don't know if he's going to do it. If he had won the game yesterday, we wouldn't be talking about this. Wouldn't be a discussion, because the next time we see Lamar, he'll be in the Super Bowl.
Sure. I mean, and again, you have to give credit where credit is due. That man's had an incredible body of work over the course of the season, and so has Mahomes, right? But I don't think you can discredit what that man has done for 17, 18, 19 weeks of football because he had a bad night. I mean,
Hey, sometimes, but on the other side of it, you got to give it credit up to your boy, Patrick Mahomes, man. I didn't realize that he was 10-1 against the spread. Woo! That's
listen,
incredible.
man,
So,
you have some guys sometimes that just, that kind of defy the odds, and he's one of those guys you just don't want to ever bet against, right? And there's certain guys who come playoff time or come when the lights come on and it means the most, they're gonna come to play. And Patrick Mahomes is one of those guys, man. And so, and again, he's done it repeatedly and over and over. And he's been there, he's done that. And so he's won some championships. This is not his first rodeo, right? So he knows how to prepare. Obviously he's a student of the game. He knows how to motivate his team. They had some lulls and struggles throughout the season, but they're playing well at the right time.
Oh yeah, and so here's the question to you then. So let's get this: 6 or 7, heading into the Super Bowl, right? Tom Brady is gone. So can we consider Patrick Mahomes the newest GOAT? Because we know in the NFL everything operates around the QB, right? And so far, for 6 Super Bowls or for 6 years, 6 or 7 years, this young man ain't let us down.
I don't know if I go as far as on the GOAT commentary, because I think that's too loosely utilized, right? I think the GOAT commentary about the greatest of all time. Patrick Mahomes is a great player. Greatest of all time is a different conversation. Right. And so I think is he the best quarterback in the NFL? You could make an argument for that, right? Yeah. In terms of what he's done historically and what he's done this season. And certainly if he adds another championship to his repertoire, then you could definitely make that argument.
Yeah, and I think so too. Man, hey, listen, guys, if you're just tuning in right now with my guy Merle Cole, if you guys are just now checking in to the Pull Up Podcast Show with your boy Coach Tony, make sure you like us, subscribe, and do more important, you share this. Merle, as we got this young audience and we're trying to grow this show, let's dig into the background, man. Tell everybody where you're originally from.
Born and raised in Greenville, South Carolina, man.
Oh, you down in way down in the bottom on South Carolina. They say South Kakalaka.
Yeah, I'm situated in between Atlanta and Charlotte, so we kind of sit on the 85 corridor in between the two.
Oh yeah. And then your opportunity to come in, that you sisters and brothers and your siblings. How many siblings do you have?
One sister.
One sister, okay. And then you have the opportunity because your dad had a huge name as yourself, Mr. North Carolina A&T back in the day, and that's as A&T was making that name back that's pretty much the same time Tennessee State and all these boys were the HBCUs was really carrying that brand, and somebody was talking to me the other day, I don't know what it's going to take to get that HBCU brand back. What do you think?
It's unfortunately because there's so much money in television, in sports as a whole, especially at the collegiate level. It's difficult for HBCUs to compete because they don't have the funding and the alumni donor base, right, in terms of how much money is given back to the school to compete with some of these larger, predominantly white institutions.
Right.
So it's tougher for the HBCUs to compete at the Power 5 level, but you now see some of that transition and some of that revenue sharing taking place where you see some of the HBCUs like a Tennessee State, like A&T, like Hampton, leaving historically black conferences, right, and joining predominantly white conferences.
Right.
So you're starting to see some of that migration because there's football money to be divvied up, right, amongst the conferences. And so, Tennessee State to date has been the most successful of the HBCUs that have left and gone to predominantly white conferences because of their basketball program.
Right.
So they've competed at a really high level and had some tournament, opportunities inside the white conference. That's not the case yet, for Hampton and A&T because they're just now kind of starting their journeys. They're a couple of years in. Tennessee State's been in their conference for a number of years now. So
Yeah, we're in OVC down here in the Ohio Valley Conference
Right.
with Tennessee State. And like I said, they've held their own, whether it been in the middle of the pack, above. Of course, we've got, Eddie George right now on the football side of the house. So you kind of get that ex-Tennessee Titans name loading it up. And this is his best year he's had right now, Merle, behind the scenes with Tennessee State. And I don't know if you know or not, and for the people that's watching, speaking of Tennessee State, we are here in witnessing a revolution of hockey coming to the university.
I read an article about about Tennessee State having a hockey team and actually signing the first kid. It was an article the other day that I actually
the brother from Williams from Drury University. So he just signed to the hockey program, man, and they're going to grow that out. So I want to give just big shout out to my guy, man, Mickey Allen, Dr. Allen. The athletic director. He's doing a lot of good things over here at the university, man. And I didn't know, as you were just mentioning about the Hampton situation in A&T. What conference did they jump to?
If I'm not mistaken, I want to say the Colonial, but
that makes sense. Either that or the Big South.
The Colonial. I might need to check my information on that, but I know they jumped. They weren't one of them was in either the Big South for a year or two, and then moved to the Colonial, something along those lines. But I need to do some digging to find out. But I don't know if you knew this, but Tennessee State actually is the only school to have an HBCU grad in the NBA right now.
Hey, we talk about that, and that's my guy. And by the way, if you don't know, I'm from Chicago, baby. I say hard, South Side. But my man, Robert Covington, he's a Covington, west side of the city,
right.
And Chicago. And we pride ourselves because the thing about that, Merle, as we get in this conversation tonight, you obviously play ball at a PWI and at a Power 5 school in Clemson University. And a lot of people don't give credit to that HBCU thing because they kind of get overshadowed. And, obviously TSU was trying to make that move into the PWI so that they can probably, like you said, get the money. No different than what Hampton and Carolina. The only way to make that move is because of the football money and what you had an opportunity to get on that. When you were down at Clemson, how was that?
I mean, it was certainly an experience in terms of seeing the atmosphere and the facilities and the amenities that come with being at a school of that size and a school with that kind of donor base. And a school at that time, man, football is king at those kind of schools, right? For the most part. Now, there are some schools where basketball kind of runs the yard, right? But most of the times at your Power Fives, football is king. And you see the types of stadiums, right? The locker room access, how they travel, the television schedule, there's just the anticipation to build up around each and every recruiting class. You know what I mean? Like it's a yearly and a weekly, monthly, daily kind of who we're recruiting, why we're recruiting them, where they're from, how many stars do they have? That football thing is and it's the landscape of football is changing because for years football didn't have an AAU.
Right, 707.
What was called AAU, right, or travel team type recruiting opportunities. But now with the 707, the landscape of football is changing in terms of how they recruit and how kids are being visible over the spring and summer. And those 707s start. I mean, they're starting. They start late January or February. They rock it, And so it's definitely good to see those kids getting more visibility and having an opportunity. And I'll say this. And you asked a question earlier about the HBCUs, and it's a great opportunity for kids, not just to go to PWIs, but to also have an opportunity to play at HBCUs. There's not enough HBCUs, right, for every black kid that's playing a sport to just attend an HBCU. And so it bothers me, when you hear guys say all these kids should just go to HBCUs. Well, that's not possible. It's not, and I don't know the sheer numbers, but there's not enough HBCUs to house every black athlete that's playing basketball and football and baseball and running track across the country. It's just not. Right. And so if you started just kind of minimizing those numbers, then you'd have some kids that wouldn't have an opportunity to go, showcase their abilities and their skills whatever school it may be. And that's not a slight to HBCUs. I'm just saying the reality of it in terms of sheer numbers. I'm glad to see all these young men and young women getting a chance to go show their abilities and skills, no matter what school they go to.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. On that note, we just had the 24-second shot clock hit us. First quarter is over. Val, got to pay some bills. We'll be right back, bro, with Merle Cole on the Pull Up Podcast Show.
Are you a small business owner looking to grow? Introducing the KeySpot mobile app. I'm Cynthia McAllister, owner of the IT company Quality SAP. Since 2016, we have been supporting small businesses and help them promote and share their businesses, services, and events across the country. KeySpot is more than just an app. We are a network providing community. KeySpot, connecting communities and supporting small businesses.
Man, I'm about to get out of rock and roll with me and you, Merle. She doing ACT, man. I tell you what, it's so funny that you just mentioned that a moment ago. We talked a little bit last time you was with us about the book on the black market and everything. And if you got questions and you're looking to this show tonight, once again, we rocking and rolling with my main guy, his brother Merle Cole. We talking about the good, the bad, and ugly when it comes down to the business of college basketball and recruiting. Merle, I've been in this game a long time, just like you, player, coach, scout, recruiting, still in this game to this very day. And when you had an unfortunate situation where the feds was talking to you, trying to figure out everything that was going on, and during the time that these players were being exploited for their physical talents in order for the universities to kind of get paid for it. The one kid that brings me in mind reading the book is Zion Williamson and the whole situation that happened. Kind of take us through that process and the process of what happened with you with the unfortunate ordeals with that and the feds.
Yeah, so I was at the time I was consulting for Adidas, and the job for those companies is to find players. Your job is to find the next what we call an endorser, right? The next kind of guy that can help you sell shoes, right? When you work for those types of companies. And so it's your job to know who's who and who are the up and coming talented kids that could have a chance to move the needle from a retail standpoint. That's the ultimate goal when you work for those companies. And so you're placed in a situation where you're asked to get involved, become an influential part of that kid's circle. You're asked to, sometimes wine and dine family. You're asked to help mom and dad travel. You're asked to pay for hotel rooms. You're asked to get rental cars. You're asked to help fly them to games. You're asked for a lot of these things, and that's part of the relationship building process. You're asked to help them pay rent. Right. You're asked these things. Well, again, if you're consulting or if you're working inside of some of those corporate, structures, it's not really your money to spend. So you have to get approvals from said company to go do your job. And so that's exactly what happened in my situation. I did my job, and then the next thing I know, I have feds knocking at my door saying I defrauded the university.
Oh, wow.
And kind of go, what do you mean? How am I defrauding the university when the company that I work for is asking me to do it? And then you get to a point, man, where you really understand, first of all, being a black man. Second of all, corporate interests and money. And, our legal system is really set up to make sure that corporate interest and money is going to win, right? And that happens because they keep the truth from being visible, whether that be in the media or whether that be in the courtroom. Your voice means nothing and the truth means nothing. And that was an interesting process to go through. When you say, hey, I'm doing my job, that's what these folks asked me to do. And this is not necessarily as it related to Zion, You asked me about the situation that I found myself in. That was a separate situation, but I'm just kind of giving you some parameters in terms of how the system, actually works. And the interesting piece about it more interesting is the ordeal I went through put me in prison for 5.5 months. And I get out, and now NIL is a deal, and there's been no federal legislation to change anything.
Exactly.
White folks just decided, okay, well, I guess it's okay now. And, again, my life, my career, my reputation doesn't mean anything, throw you to the wayside. You're just another black man that's been, not now I got a number on my back, and I got the scarlet letter, and, we'll go on about our business as usual.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. I just spoke to another guy on the other side. You'll understand the parallel to this. This gentleman I happened to bump in, was talking to him. I don't know how we got on the subject, and he was talking about, he just came out from doing 20 on his head, had a 25 for marijuana possession. Now he gets out, and weed is legal in 30 states.
Right.
But you still got people in prison doing long terms that was caught up with a few grams, a few pounds, or whatever, and I look at that because, looking at your story, and I've been there, I was that coach on that sideline. I talked to, not naming the coaches, the universities, in those players, talking to those universities where I was that guy sometime that I had that kid on my AAU program, Merle, that coach wanted to talk to. But because that coach is outside of the dead period or whatever, they made it easy. What they used to do back in the day was they would call the coach, which would be me, because we had to turn our phone bills in on a monthly basis, which you already knew that, and circle the guys or the calls that you were making.
And that crazy thing in terms of what you're saying, Tony, is what they would do is they would use the shoe company guys because you had multi-million-dollar contracts with those universities, right? Correct. So the shoe companies have multi-million-dollar contracts with the universities. So, well, you have access to the kid and you're not an agent. You can do this for me. You can help me do this, and you're helping your company and you're helping us. Right. So you become the middleman in between the relationship between the university and the shoe company and the kid, right? And so then when shit hits the fan, nobody knows anything, and I never told them to do that. I don't know where it came from, that kind of thing. So
yeah, and it's crazy because for whatever reason, and I don't know, and maybe you can help me out. I talked to several people about this. When in the United States did we ever change from you're innocent until proven guilty to now when things go down, whether I see the stuff with P. Diddy or the things that's going on with multiple stars, you are now guilty to prove your innocence. When did that change?
Yeah, I don't know. But like I said, I know sitting in a courtroom where you're not allowed to put any evidence. I have text messages and wiretap phone calls that prove my innocence, but then the judge said, no, we're not allowing that into the courtrum.
So you mean to tell me that you're sitting in the courtroom, you've got a situation where 9 out of 10 times, actually 10 out of 10 times, you're supposed to be heard to your peers. You're supposed to be able to present the information, whether damaging or whether it can help you find yourself innocent. And the judge now says, I know you got the information, but we're not going to talk about those kids. We're not going to talk about that information. We're going to talk about the information that the district attorney has.
I judge went as far as say you're not going to talk about poor black kids in my courtroom.
Wow.
And so
what do you think that make up pretty much 80 to 90% of college basketball and football?
Right. And then it was, okay, so our lawyers were saying, okay, well, put the ADs and coaches on the stand that made the request. No, we're going to put the compliance people on the stand. So again, man, it's playing the game of, no, we know you're not guilty, but we got to make you guilty because we brought the case.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking at Mark. Mark is one of my guys. And Mark says that, remember the former case at Marquette University. They turned it into a movie right before Al McGuire became a legacy, know. And we're talking about in the late 60s, early 70s during that time period. But we at that point, I think during that 60s and 70s, correct me if I'm wrong, but you couldn't have no more than one or two. At that time, you had Russell. He was on there. You had Lou Alcindor that was coming in the early 70s. It went out to UCLA. But, you didn't have nothing playing in the SEC. You didn't have, these slew of black players at Alabama and Ole Miss. None of that was going on.
But what's even more interesting is there was a white man named Norby Walters who they tried to stick the same charges on, who they acquitted of, and who was an actual agent. And he went home scot-free. He became Eric B. and Rakim's agent.
Yeah, oh my goodness. And you know what happened with that? They became one of the greatest rappers of all time. Classic on right now.
But we don't. But when you look like us, you get convicted.
You get convicted. And now you got that number, like you said, and when you come out, you got to start from the bottom. Like my boy said, started from the bottom, now I'm here.
Exactly.
Man, and that is absolutely insane. And then the other tough part about it is that, the kids become the punk. Yeah. Because how many kids, Merle, man, I done drove home from basketball practice, single mothers. I had one of my guys the other day was talking to me, and he was saying, man, I'm a little upset. I'm more mad about the situation, how, I saw this guy doing this, or I saw this guy doing that with this particular kid. Why is it that it's always the poor black guy or the poor black girl, then she becomes a story that becomes a great story? Mm-hmm. I said, because no one wants to hear good. Right. If Merle Cole was took over from his dad, and had the law firm, became a super agent, had me as his number one recruit, that went to the NBA and made a lot of money. Nobody want to hear that. No, that's too good.
We're not a story until it's either rags to riches or they can criminalize or vilify us.
Correct.
That's when we become a story.
And the crazy part about that whole situation, to correct me if I'm wrong, you still got Nike, you still got Adidas, and you still got Under Armour on that stock market, still making those stocks, still get those shoes and still getting those kids. EYBL. Now, after the Adidas situation, they took a major hit because, at one point we were playing on the Adidas gauntlet, myself, gold and silver. And after the hit, they kind of took it back. And then EYBL, which is Nike, a lot of people don't understand, that's the Nike's elite team for the basketball that they use. Under Armour's UAA. And both of them kind of like, okay, great. They took the opportunity to take those Adidas programs, and now the Nike's got like 25, 30, 40 teams. Under Armour's got the rest, and they haven't stopped at all. And they're still putting the shoes and the merchandise and the product is still there. They're just doing it in a different way. And now NIL, as you mentioned earlier, the NCAA done screwed up so bad, the NIL is here, and now you have to pay the athletes.
Well, and again, it's all about control. And if you think about it, it's all about controlling our ability to earn. And so if you live in a capitalist society, you should have the ability to earn. Well, again, it was slave labor. And because you could basically force them to do your bidding while your coaches are making millions of dollars. And I had teammates in college that were struggling to eat.
Sure.
I had teammates whose mother and fathers never got a chance to come see them play because they couldn't afford it.
Yep, my mom never got a chance to see me at the same time. I get it.
But your coach is making millions of dollars a year. But then you want to criminalize folks who say, hey, man, you need some help. I mean, I recall one young man, he borrowed a suit from somebody to go to his boy's funeral. They suspended, they made him ineligible because of impermissible benefits. This is the shit they don't talk about. You had a kid who wanted to transfer because he had a dying mother, wanted to transfer schools. They told him, no, you got to sit out a year. So there's all kinds of stories. Again, man, you are a chattel. You are a piece of property that they see fit to use how they want to. Remember now, at that time, if you transferred, you had to sit out.
Yeah, at that time, you transferred, you had to sit out a year. Now you get an automatic one transfer for free.
If you took a piece of pizza from somebody and didn't pay for it, or somebody gave it to you, it was an impermissible benefit. And so again, man, it's now coming full circle, and I'm really happy that these young men and young women are able to utilize their abilities to earn, because not everybody's going to the WNBA or the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball, and they can capitalize on those abilities in the prime of their careers, however long it may be. And it gives them a head start in life, and they can change the economic situations or the stations in life and prayerfully they can pass on those resources to the folks coming behind them within their own families. And that's how we change culturally, how we benefit, how we build up our communities, our economic dollars within our own communities and our own neighborhoods. We now have more authority to make decisions, whether that be judges, whether that be politicians that represent our communities. Like, those dollars go a long way to changing what has been historically, how do I say it? It's historically been left behind. We haven't necessarily had an opportunity to do those things because we haven't had the economic prowess to do so.
Exactly. Hey, we are talking to my main man, Merle Cole. And if you guys haven't had the opportunity, it's the book here, The Black Market. We're talking about the high levels, college basketball, the good, the bad, the ugly. We at halftime, the shot clock just went off. Val, you got to pay some bills right now. We'll be right back to the Pull Up Podcast show with Coach Tony. Forget Val, ain't gonna pay no bills. We're gonna continue till she talk to me back here. But
Okay.
I had a great question as we go into the next segment here. One of my guys and I was talking earlier. He had a specific question for you. He said, "Man, please, I may or may not get a chance to jump on a podcast tonight, but I want to make sure that Merle, he can answer this question for me." And it was really nice. Talk about the difference in counterbalance, meaning that player-coach relationship versus coach-player relationship. And let me give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the relationship where the player is a property to the university, as what you just said coming off. And mother, sick, funeral, can't borrow clothes, shoes, whatever, got to go home, got to transfer, got to take a hit to his scholarship activity.
Okay.
And if he does something out of line, he's either suspended, have to set a semester, or maybe have to lose a year of scholarship. But on the other side, on the other side of the coin, we're talking about coaches like Will Wade, right? Bruce Weber and a couple other guys that we know that went through the whole gamut that get into a situation, Rick Pitino, that may have gotten fired, lost their job or whatever, and the same year they transfer mid-season and get picked up by another university, or they sit 6 months, still get their paycheck to finish out their contract, and then go to another university to get a bigger paycheck to continue on, and then that kid's career is done.
So I'm going to answer that backwards, and I'm going to answer the second part of that by simply saying, how many black coaches have you ever had that happen to? And I'm going to leave it at that.
Gotcha. Yes.
Right? The first part of that is I've got gobs of situations where kids are property. From personal experience, right? In terms of my own teammates. I had a teammate who came down and said, because at that time you were on what was called a 1-year renewable scholarship.
Correct.
So most people, in the general public would think when you sign a scholarship offer, it's a 4-year commitment. It's not. It wasn't at that time. It was a 1-year renewable deal. So at the end of each season, your coach had to re-sign your scholarship, right?
Yep.
So I've had several teammates where after that first year or second year, head coach will go to them and say, "Hey man, you're not good enough and you hadn't been producing, so you need to find somewhere else to go."
Yeah.
Real simple, right? So now the kid is stuck because where else is he going? He hasn't been out letting people know he was going to be available or he was leaving. He didn't know. So now you tell him you're not going to renew a scholarship, and you basically say, "Hey man, screw you. Go home and find you somewhere else to go because you're not coming back here."
Exactly. That's insane. Hey, we're talking to my guy, Merle Cole, talking about the black market, the business of basketball, the good, the bad, ugly. If you got a question for Brother Cole, please put it in the chat lines. We can put it up. I know Mark Lee, Mark, my guy, he talks again. He was like, so Mark was talking about back in 95 and a couple other situations that went on and asking the question about when you got these kids that are high powered, high profile, whether it be the Zion Williamson and those guys, a lot of people don't know about their bad situation like you did, but the agents do because those shoes become more important. I always tell guys, I learned early on, Merle, had guys playing for me, man. I used to take it personal, man. And they used to leave me for another AAU team. I used to take it personal. And then I learned that it was all about the shoe game. It was, hey, if you ain't got a pair of shoes, be coach, I love you, man, but I got a dip. And so I had to put myself, coming from the south side of Chicago, playing ball, coming up, and if that was me, and I had opportunity to get a pair of Pro Kids back in the day, some Avias, Ponies, which was hot items, yeah, I probably would have left too. Right. Starter jacket, and not seeing the little paper that maybe my mom and daddy would get, or maybe my mama, because I was at home. You know, the crazy part about it is basketball, and now the NIL, and I tell you what's killing basketball right now, and I want you to talk to, is the portal. I don't care if it's football, I don't care if it's basketball. Do you know they said by the end of the season, end of football this day, there was already 13,000 kids in the portal on football. 13,000.
Well, so I have a little bit of a different take on the portal situation. And it's not necessarily a popular one, but it's the reality of the portal.
Right.
But I'll go back to you saying about the shoe. So yeah, I mean, I think when you have kids who don't have, so in my experience and my years in this business, I mean, you came from Chicago. You know how cold it is during the winter.
Oh yeah.
Some of those families are struggling to pay bills. Yeah. So now if a shoe company or the folks that work for shoe companies and this kid has some ability, comes in and says, hey man, I'm gonna make sure you, mom, dad, have shoes, have sweatsuits, have jackets and coats and hats and sweats, scullies and everything that you need to make sure you're warm for the winter. Well, I just became Santa Claus, right?
Yeah, you did.
And so everybody loves Santa Claus, and so now my voice becomes more influential with you and your family because I am providing a need. I'm giving you something that you desire and you otherwise might not have an opportunity to do so, right? Think about this as well. Some of those kids in Chicago have never been outside of the city.
Exactly.
So now some of those kids have never been outside of their side of town, right?
Exactly. When I was a South Side kid, you ain't going to the West Side. You better get caught on the West Side.
Right. No, I lived in Chicago for 10 years, man. West Side kids ain't going south, South Side kids ain't going west, right?
Exactly.
And so you talk about kids that can't leave their own neighborhoods because of the fears of being shot or being killed, right? So, so now all of a sudden you're putting these kids in a situation where they get a chance to experience life. They get a chance to get on an airplane and fly somewhere and go to Atlanta or go to LA or go to Texas. They get to see other people in other environments that they otherwise wouldn't have had an opportunity to do. And the game has provided those things for them. So has the shoe, right? And so there are some positives that come with that. There are some negatives that come with that, but it does provide some kids with some opportunities to do some things that otherwise wouldn't have had a chance to experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, you said it so right. I laugh and joke, Merle, like you say, you've been there, man. Growing up in the city, man, that and whatnot. I remember being told directly, if I ever catch you on the West Side, I'm breaking your neck. Yeah. And I met my homeboy by the time we got to college to play ball. He was like, man, I never been on South Side City till I met you. Or because we was ball players, you had the luxury because you had games sometime on the West Side.
Because you were a hooper, right? You got to pass because you were a hooper sometimes. So yeah, I mean, so and it was an interesting experience for me, not being from there and having to navigate my way on both sides of town, right?
Right.
And having to deal with folks on both sides of town, whether I was out west at Marshall or whether I was down south, you know what I mean? Or whether I was at Naperville or, you know what I mean? Like Weston House or, I was all over the place in the city, man. So I get it. And I had a chance to experience it. So I know exactly what you're saying. The portal conversation for me, it becomes a choice. And sometimes it needs to be handled realistically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm going to speak on it from a basketball perspective because that's my background. You have kids sometimes that are playing at, high profile or who got recruited who are playing at high profile D1 programs who hadn't touched the floor in 2 years. Right? They got no stats, got no numbers, and they have done no legwork in terms of saying, hey, I think I want to transfer out, and having some people in their circle start, hey, man, I think this kid is going to transfer. Is there any interest? They don't do that. They just throw their name in the portal and wait to see what happens. And then when nobody comes calling, they're stuck because they're told the school that they're leaving.
Exactly.
And the team says, okay, great. That's another scholarship. We can go get somebody else.
Exactly.
Right? Now you're searching for a place to go because you weren't prepared. Or you have kids who are playing, but they're not productive. And social media is good, but it's also terrible.
It's also terrible. And if you got that assistant coach, that head coach moves out, and I had a kid of mine, like my nephew, my main man, Mike Drew, what's up, baby? Checking in tonight. You checking in tonight with my guy, Merle Cole. This is me, the one and only Coach Tony on the Pull Up Podcast show, talking about the good, the bad, the ugly when it comes to college basketball, recruiting, scouting, and everything. But, the other piece on that, Merle, is that when another coach takes over and then tell you that you weren't part of my recruiting class, so you need to look for someplace else. That happened to my nephew. Yeah. He went out to school to Iowa, and I tell kids all the time, and this is a point for everybody that's listening. And I had this conversation early today, yesterday, this week. As you move forward, whether you basketball, football, especially, because those are the two money-earning sports in college, especially at the Power 5 level. Make sure you love the university for what you're going to major in, the atmosphere, the professors, and what you can learn, because the moment the opportunity for the head coach to get paper to leave, that can happen. And it may take you and your opportunity away. One of the questions came for you, Merle, real quick, and that is, what do you think about people that are not certified agents who are now trying to step in to those roles, i.e., I know Lamar Jackson's mom, we go back to football, became his agent because of a whole nother circumstances. But in the basketball world, where there's more kids playing ball, and you're looking at that, what about that? Because the NCAA made some rules at one point where they said, hey, if you weren't an agent, you no longer could represent the kids, i.e. because of what happened with LeBron James and his homeboys.
Yeah, I mean, again, that to me, that was that was an attack on being black, partly, right? So Rich Paul, LeBron's childhood friend, becomes his agent, doesn't have a college degree, and they were going to make a rule that you had to have a college degree to become an agent. Listen, some of the smartest people in the world never went to college, right? And so that doesn't define your intellect because you didn't go to get a degree at some school, whatever it looks like. Now, that being said, you need to have some experience or do some understudy somewhere to have some knowledge of contracts. And because there are a bunch of nuances as it relates to contracts. Right. What are the guarantees? What do the bonus structures look like? How much of a team salary cap can they afford you? Blah, blah, blah. There are some nuances as it relates to these contracts. So Rich had done some other understudying, right, at a large scale agency before stepping out on his own. He'd done the legwork. Lamar's mom obviously had done the legwork, right, in terms of understanding what she was asking for. Not, are you going to get it? No, but you know what to put on the negotiating table based on how do you put the presentations together to compare your stats and your analytics to somebody else's to get a figure, whatever that number is. So yes, if someone's going to be in your corner for you and your child, then they should have some experiences in that space, negotiating contracts in that space. So you can't just, because the one thing you find about sports at a high level is everybody is an expert, which is really interesting. And I say that,
like everybody's a coach on the sideline.
Yeah, I say that, because we've all experienced where some dude or some woman, either or, right, who's never touched the ball in their life, never played the game in any capacity, can tell everybody on that floor what they should be doing. Right. and has zero understanding of the nuances of the game. You talk about down screens, fade screens, hedging the screen, and like looking at you like you're speaking Chinese, but they can tell you what you should have done. Right. And it's the same with football. And so it's the same with the business of sport. I can tell you what you need to be getting, how you need to be getting it, and have someone in your corner that has some experiences in dealing with whether it be NIL contracts for your child, whether it be actual standard player contracts and agreements for that particular sport, whether it be somebody that's had some marketing experience, because those are separate entities, right? And so you need to make sure that, again, whoever in your corner can justify who they've been with, and you can verify, because people will tell you anything.
Oh, yeah. Hey, we talking to my main man, his brother Merle Cole, talking about the business of the black market. Val, I hope you're back this time. Let's pay some bills and we roll into the fourth quarter.
Thank you, guys. You're too funny. Guys, this is Val the Voice Johnson, and this is the Pull Up Podcast, and I am your producer and also the announcer here. Did you know that there's a brand new book available? I am now an author. A DJ Saved My Life. It is one of the new books, ebook that is coming to you March 5th. Pre-sales are happening right now. And we're grateful that you guys are able to join us tonight here on the Pull Up Podcast. And we're going to go on right back to Coach Tony and our special guest, Merle Cole. Here's Coach.
Hey, man, I appreciate you, Val the Voice. Welcome back to the Pull Up Podcast show. We're going into the fourth quarter with my guy, brother Merle Cole.
And let me do the fourth quarter ring. Here we go.
Here you go. Brother Merle. So I got a question on the table for you, Merle. A thought process one of the guys put on, Brother Mike Drew. He said, it's about the culture. Or what do you think about the culture? And do it fit into the college or the universities in terms of changing? Because we see the culture in corporate America, right? They told women you were underpaid for so many years, especially black women. And then they did a study to show that, women was making like 70% of what the man was, or 60, something like that. So he wanted to understand the culture in the college setting at that D1 level, because right now you and I are talking about, I'm struggling, and me and you talked the other day, to get some of these high school kids, we got scholarships because the portal is so loaded. So is it the culture, and what's going on with that in terms of the recruiting piece?
Well, no, it's a log jam, right? And it's a log jam of kids, but it's also the lack of coaches' desires to put the effort and time in to teach.
Right.
So when you have freshmen in high school who don't understand the time commitment at the collegiate level in terms of the weightlifting and the conditioning, who don't understand concepts defensively or understand concepts at the high school level, because it's unfortunate, but there aren't many high schools that do a ton of teaching.
Right.
So most kids at the high school level who are talented, are talented just off God-given ability, not because they've been taught the technical aspects of the game. And so what you find is now schools are now looking for those kids in the transfer portal because they've already got collegiate experience under their belt, and they're ready to play once they step on my campus. I don't have to go through the sheer basics that I would have to go through with a freshman. And so a lot of those kids who are freshmen who would have historically been mid-level or low-level D1 players are now getting pushed down into the D2 levels, so that they can get that year of experience, and then they can now put themselves in the portal and transfer back up if they're productive But that's kind of what's
It's
happening.
almost like the G League in the NBA.
It's a log jam, and so you'll see some guys that'll have to go to D2s or D3s or NAIAs who otherwise would have had opportunities, but now because of the transfer portal. But you're also seeing some kids that are getting stuck and don't have anywhere to go.
Man, I want you guys to listen to these gems that Merrill is giving you. Merrill, when I say I just had this conversation this week, and exactly what you just said, I explained to a parent, mom and dad, that I try to teach exactly what you said a moment ago, bringing the education part to my high school team, that they have not had the opportunity to understand schemes and understand that you got multiple games in a week. Once one game is gone, you got to forget about it. We got a scheme for this next game, which you could be playing a team that runs primary break and set up. You could be running against a team that's playing transition ball in the alley-oops and press. So I try to make them understand that. But I'm glad to see that you pointed out the fact of the matter that these kids are stuck in such a logjam that they're having to take multiple avenues sometimes to get what they want. They may be a D1 ball player, but unfortunately, they're not going to be there this year. I had a kid, and actually you and I spoke about him, not mentioning any names, that we were trying to get, you were trying to help me get this kid moved earlier. They had to take a D3 opportunity. And I had D1s looking at him, but exactly what you said. They were like, why am I going to take a shot on an 18-year-old who I don't know how this kid's going to react when I get in his face. I don't know how this kid's going to act when I tear him out the frame. I don't know how this kid's going to act when I isolate him on an island. How this kid's going to react when we put in multiple schemes he's never seen. Can he not pick up the scheme? And then I don't know how this kid's going to react if he doesn't get his academics together and have to set a semester, and all this. Whereas I know I got this kid over here. Yeah, I know he's a screw up. Yeah, I know he doesn't do this and that, but he's played 3 years at the D1 level, and I know he can play. And it's easier for me to go and say, hey, son, I'm going to give you 1 year. You got 1 year to get it together. That 1 year may be the only year that kid needs, and a light bulb goes off, and all of a sudden the kid becomes an NBA prospect.
But you also think about it from a coaching standpoint, Tony. Like these coaches it's the microwave scenario. Coaches don't get to stay around, for the most part, 5 and 10 years. They got to win right now. So if I'm spending my time trying to educate a bunch of freshmen, I'm not going to have a job.
Right.
And so I got to find the right mix of guys who have a bunch of experience and then throw in some guys that might not. But the number of guys who might not have a bunch of experience will be small. You know
what's amazing on that? And I want you to answer this. What's amazing, you've seen it from both perspectives. And I talked to a couple guys. Of course, I had your guy, my main man, Coach Omar, on last week, talking about everything. It's amazing when the universities either lose or fire the coach. And let's say, hypothetically, I got a 4-year deal, $25 million to pay me $100 million to coach on the sideline. And I gave the university 2 of those years, and they don't like it. They let me go the middle of those 2 years. And as long as I don't accept a position, the university still owes me $50 million. And I'm going to get that $50 million if I don't take a job.
Yeah, typically you have a buyout. Yeah, typically you have. So typically, like if you got the 4 years for the numbers, but for the numbers you use, you got 4 years, 100 million, and you do 2 of them. Typically, if they fire you, you won't get 50. They may pay you 20, right? We'll buy you out at the 20. If we fire you, blah blah. There's that kind of deal now. But still, if you don't get another job, they still owe you 20 million, right? And so
they still owe me 20 million, but the kid loses out. He gets nothing.
No, and then they're gonna hire somebody else to take your place while they're paying you 20 million. So
exactly right. And the kid goes back home to the neighborhood. And like you said, if he's not academically inclined to have this right here, he's either one or 2 places, either working at Walmart or possibly back on the street.
Yep. Unfortunately, it happens quite regularly.
Yeah, that's hard. Man.
Which is why it's important for these young men to understand you can't let the system use you. You got to figure out how to use them back. Go get your degree.
Okay, and that's funny. I was talking to one of my homeboys about a couple of months ago that was talking, and he's an NFL guy, ended up getting the Super Bowl, and I said, would you go and recommend a kid that's chasing a Super Bowl ring or the money? And he says, Tony, let me tell you something. If I had to do it all over again and play on 5 different teams for the money versus the ring, I'd have did it, because I got a lot of my teammates that played that sold that ring because they needed the money.
Right.
Real talk.
Real talk.
Man, we talked to my guy, Brother Merle Cole. Man, it's been great. It's been great. I know Val want to ask a couple of questions. I know she's about to bounce back in here. This has been great, man. I like the realness, and I'm hoping that some of the people who have been listening tonight answer their questions and been taking a tidbit of notes on this, because this is real. When we're talking about, even from the situation that happened to you to 2024 in January right now, is not gotten better. And I read an article 2 weeks ago, Merle, about starting next fall, the NCAA is going to give the Power 5 schools, I think it's $3 million or $3.5 million a program, so they have sort of a budget that they can pay the athletes that are there. But the question becomes, do you give that $3.5 million to football and basketball, or do you give it, like you said, to the non-generating sports, which is a track and field, baseball, gymnastics, people like that? Where's the fairness?
So there's nothing fair about any of it, right? And it's not there's no corporate system that's fair, right? Because your local mom and pop restaurant is not on the same level as Microsoft, right? So there's no corporate entity in the world of making money that's going to be fair. And what's interesting about that whole the collectives now is donor-based monies that are going to that are generated by these universities that they allocate to these players now. Right. You paying them now.
Paying them now. And they get paid.
All it will do is it'll separate, and what you guys will see starting to happen is basically you'll start seeing the formulation of super conferences, which is already happening with the Big Ten and the SEC. Right.
I said that.
So we'll see the formulation of super conferences where all the money resides, right, in those 2 major powerhouse conferences, and they'll be able to go spend freely because they'll have television revenue, along with their collectives and whatever monies this new NCAA thing will supposed to govern, I guess, but that's a crock of mess. But anyway, and then you'll see the schools that are outside of those super conferences trying to figure out how to maintain some level of spend right through their own collective, to have some athletes to participate, because the reality is, if you look at the sheer numbers, most of these larger schools couldn't survive without football and basketball.
Right.
They couldn't survive on just student tuition, which is why they treated us like slave labor, because they needed that revenue, and they didn't want the kids to make any money because they needed to keep it for themselves, so they can pay the head coach $5 million a year, so they can pay the AD $2 million a year, so they can pay the teachers $100,000 a year, so they can build these new dorms and new weight rooms and new this and new that, right? They needed that money from these kids' backs that are sweating and dying and doing everything else for these schools. And now you're seeing some of that revenue. And so how can they afford to have an $8 million collective? They've been having it. It's just now it's in plain sight.
Right. Man, I tell you, man, it's been great, man, Brother Merle. It's been great. You guys have been listening to my guy, Coach Tony, with my main man, Merle Cole, talking about the black market, the good, the bad, ugly to college basketball. Val, the voice. What's up, girl?
Oh, nothing much. This is the second time that Merle, you have been to our platform. You came on last year to talk about Black Market. We really appreciate you, number one, sharing about your story and how definitely we just have to be on the lookout for how students are recruited and just kind of that very dark world of NCAA basketball. I didn't know about it until reading through your book. And I want to personally thank you for, shining a light on this. And it makes a job like for Coach Tony having his Rise NIL available so he can look out for the student athlete and get them paid. We really appreciate you, Merle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.
Hey,
Coach,
man.
you want to wrap it up? There you go.
It's been great. Hey, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Again, season 1, episode 2 of my main guy, Merrill Cole, talking about the business of basketball and the Black market. This is Val the Voice right here, my girl. And don't forget, this is only Monday night. So if you want to get down, get back on Tuesday night. Interludes Talk on Tuesday. Val the Voice, myself, and we got my brother Mike Womble back in the house from what I'm hearing. So tune in tomorrow as well and check out the show, see what's going on. Brother Merle, I appreciate your time. Hey, anytime you want to get back, call, jump on the show, man. I'm just a phone call away, baby.
I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks again.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, guys. And join us on tomorrow. We'll be chit-chatting about the 55th annual NAACP Awards and the award-winning film American Fiction with Jeffrey Wright and Sterling K. Brown. I'm Val the Voice Johnson, and we'll see you in 2 weeks to pull up. Peace.
It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. It's the Pull Up Podcast. Pull up, pull up. Bounce the voice and Coach Tony, it's the Pull Up Podcast. So